Squad, you know what I mean? Yeah. Ooh. Ooh.
So is Supreme dying? I think the really important thing to do is to look at the most recent season, the spring-summer 2018. And when we look at that, there's been a lot of stuff that's been sitting. There's been a lot of stuff that hasn't been reselling very well. One of the big things to note is the North Face, the snakeskin one. It's going for under retail, which is crazy for a North Face. I don't think that's ever happened for a Supreme North Face collab before. So that's a really big thing to look at when you're looking at, when you're considering is Supreme dying out. But it's also hard to gauge whether or not it's actually dying out because this is just one season. And although a lot of stuff is sitting and not reselling very well, if you look at the sellout times, they're still pretty high for a lot of the items. So I mean, maybe if they had another couple seasons like back to back that were this bad and received like as much negative feedback as this one did, then it probably would start dying out. But I think it'd be really hard for Supreme to ever like actually die out just because of how hardcore some of the like followers are. I think it'd take a long time for Supreme to die out even if they did have just these bad back-to-back seasons for a couple seasons or maybe even like, I don't know, like 2 years in a row. I still think they'd have a pretty decent following just because of the time that they've been around and how established they are. I think they're big enough just to keep that following even if they did start producing bad stuff like just back to back. Another big thing that factors into this is the way that Supreme operates, like how they do their drops, how limited the products are. And I think just because of how limited everything is and you know how it's just once a Thursday you get like a couple seconds if you want to buy the item, I think that really helps out the possibility of it not dying out. When you have brands like, I don't know, like Young and Reckless and Hundreds and stuff like that, where they mass produce things, it's a huge difference between that and then what Supreme is doing, where they just produce a very limited amount of things and you have such a small window to buy it. Another big thing that factors into why I say that it's hard to gauge whether or not it will die out is the collaboration. It's these like smaller companies that really aren't probably getting much attention. I feel like they'd still be able to get as many collaborations as they wanted or like still whatever collaborations that they wanted. So for those reasons, I think it's really hard to say that Supreme is dying. I do feel like the mainstream values towards Supreme will probably shift after this season or if we saw another season very similar to this one in how poorly it was received. I do think a lot of people would shift away from Supreme. Just because, you know, you've seen the like mass amount of hype lately that built around it. I feel like that hype would kind of move away and like point itself at a different direction. But Supreme itself, I feel like is, you know, safe for a long time just because of how established they are and the way that they conduct themselves. I think they're a really smart company and they know what they're doing. It'll always have its core fan base as long as it's still running. Is Reselling dying out? Pretty related to Supreme when considering the lifespan of it. Just because like obviously there's so like reselling, like one of the main things that people are reselling is Supreme, you know, other than like Jordans and stuff and Yeezys, which are also kind of tanking. Like the Yeezys the 500s aren't selling very well, and then they're mass releasing some of the 350s. Yeezys taking a dive kind of, but like I was saying with Supreme, when you look at what's being resold, a large proportion of what's being resold is Supreme. So if Supreme does well, reselling is going to do well. If Supreme does bad, you know, reselling is going to do poorly. So those are very strongly correlated, but there are a couple different things for reselling that separates it from Supreme. So these things that are more important for reselling, like the survival of it rather than for Supreme, I would say are mainly just like the influx of resellers. We've seen this like huge raise probably like in the last year or maybe like last 2 years where the resellers have just like increased insanely. And that's kind of why some of the items are selling out, which is also kind of a danger to Supreme. Because if it loses these resellers, it could lose a whole bunch of people that are just buying these items to sell. They'd lose the people buying them because a lot of the resellers, especially nowadays, don't really know what they're doing and they're kind of ruining the market. Since they're not able to move the stuff, they're selling a lot of stuff under retail, which is crazy, or else like right next to retail. And when you sell it right next to retail, or like at retail, you lose money because you gotta like pay shipping and you gotta do taxes for wherever you're selling it through. So it's the inexperience of people like that who are trying to resell that are ruining the reselling market. Now, is it a bad thing that the reselling market would be ruined, or that like Supreme would kind of lose its dominance in the reselling market? Probably not. A lot of people frown upon resellers. It is like, personally, like I do it, and I think it's a cool hobby, and there's a lot to be learned from it, like how to run your own business and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool, and it would suck if that got taken away, but it's also not a bad thing, just because how people are, siphoning away the items that are so limited just to market way up and then sell it back to the people who are trying to buy it for retail. But yeah, so because of this inexperience of resellers and them selling it so low, it makes the people who kind of know what right around where the reselling price should actually be, it makes their items less sellable, because their prices are now, which are at like the typical resale value, they're having to lower their prices because the people are posting prices that aren't really like reasonable for a reseller to like make money or make their money back. So the people who know how to resell have to lower the prices, or else just hold on to it and hope that somebody buys it further along the road. But then that pool of people is also shrinking, because you get this higher influx of people selling it at lower prices, and it just kind of really muddies up the waters of the reselling community because of all these price differences, and people are having to lower prices because of this. It makes reselling pretty tough. So that's why a lot of people are thinking that reselling might die out, and obviously it won't like completely die out, but we could see like a massive decrease in the amount of resellers. Obviously stuff would still be present, as long as Supreme and brands like Supreme are still around, we will have resellers, as long as they're still making sneakers with limited quantities, or just in general, anything with limited quantity, we're gonna see people reselling it. So to recap everything, Supreme I think is pretty safe, just because of like how established it is. It's got this crazy fan base. We could see, if it had a couple bad seasons, maybe even like 2 years of seasons, I would say that you'd see a huge amount of people, kind of this hype that it's gained in the last couple of years. I feel like that would move away from the brand, but it's also so established, like I was saying, that I think it's pretty safe. Now, as far as reselling goes, it's strongly correlated to Supreme. So as long as Supreme's still around, we're going to have resellers. As long as brands like Supreme are still around, we're going to have resellers. Just because of the limited quantity of desirable items, we're going to have people reselling it no matter what. That doesn't mean that we won't see like a huge decrease in resellers. And that's because a lot of people have gone to reselling because of this like hype that's been surrounding Supreme, I believe. And if this hype, shifts or goes away, we're probably going to see a huge decrease in the amount of resellers, because people are probably going to lose interest in it. The prices might not be as good as they are. And then also, with the inexperienced resellers being introduced to the market, we're seeing the prices kind of taking a dip, which is good for people who are trying to buy, bad for people who are trying to sell. But yeah, so reselling we could see kind of die out a little bit, not go away though, still be there, probably still always be there, like I was saying. I hope that kind of explains things, gives you my view, my thoughts on what's going on. I was not a fan of this Supreme season. The collaborations just weren't really there. This is one of the collabs from it. I thought it was a decent collab. They had a lot of ugly stuff in it though. Let me know what you guys think about the Supreme season, what you think about reselling in general. But yeah, other than that, thanks for watching. See you guys later.
Diamonds kissing, baby, how about the cool? That get shot to keep it straight.